Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you are watching the video, uh, I'll start by giving a quick hello. My name is Michael Corral. I am the director of the REACH Network. For those that might be learning about REACH for the first time on this video, REACH is an acronym for Race, Education, and Community Healing. And the REACH Network essentially is a collaborative or a collective that is dedicated to addressing racial disparities and improving discipline practices across schools in California. All right, so the purpose for this interview specifically, it's framed around our webinar on October 1st, where we covered a lot on restorative practices and discipline reform, but we didn't have time during some breakout sessions to get through all the amazing questions uh, attendees were asking. So today's goal is to give this amazing leader and founder of Crete Academy, Brett Mitchell, the opportunity to respond to some of those unanswered questions and then provide some deeper insights. So before I start rattling off a few questions for you, Brett, I'd like to ask for you to briefly introduce yourself again, similar to maybe how you did on the original webinar for anybody that's possibly watching this for the first time. So your role at the school, uh, where your school is located, grades, and then a bit about your student body.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Brett Mitchell. I am the co-founder and current executive director of Crete Academy. We founded the school in 2016 with a unique mission to serve families that are experiencing homelessness. We're located in South Central Los Angeles. We have two campuses, one campus on Crenshaw and 60th, another campus on King and Western. We have a little over 300 students, the majority of which who are African American. We're about 60% African American, 40% Latino. And every day we are chasing that mission down, getting closer to solutions and impacting our community in a positive way, bringing resources, care, and love to the families that have some challenging backgrounds. So that's the work we do. We're TK through 6. So we're an elementary school. And in the first webinar, I also shared, it's founded on the quote by Frederick Douglass, it's much easier to raise a child than to fix a broken man. And we really, the earlier we're able to impact these kids' lives, the better off the progress goes. I will also just touch on, another very unique part of the school, which is our Harmony Center. The school was founded by Hattie Mitchell, and she came up with a plan based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs to really get at the basic needs of all the students in Los Angeles. So what we do, we help with emergency housing. We help place families in shelters. We then help with job training, parenting classes, getting family into affordable housing. We have counseling for all students. We have medical and dental that is free for all students monthly. We have a UCLA medical van that goes to both of our campuses, vision, hearing. We have a food pantry. So it's a true wraparound system. It's a true wraparound to all of our families to make sure that our kids are safe and stable and have their basic needs so that way they're able to be competitive academically once they leave our school.
Yeah, it's powerful and beautiful. And now I remember the question too, just to add some context. What year is Crete in terms of its existence?
So this is our 8th year. We were founded in 2016, opened our doors in 2017. And so we're starting off of our 8th year this year.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into it, Brett. So one of the first questions that was posed to both school teams in the webinar were how are parents and or caregivers involved in the process of addressing discipline, suspension, expulsions, etc.
So what we like to do as a school is make sure that everything is being built on a foundation of relationships. And the way that we're able to do our work, not just with a lot of the sensitive information shared, but having a true partnership with the parents. Because if we're doing one thing at school for 8 hours and the kids are doing another thing at home for the rest of the day, there's not enough alignment to see progress. So we bring parents in very early. We do home visits. So we make sure that each of our students, before the school year starts, they get a home visit from an administrator and a teacher. We have frequent parent engagements. We have monthly parent meetings. And the goal is not just as educators, but as community partners. How can we best serve your child? How can we best make progress? And it's not just, we know everything that works. It's, you're the expert on your child. You've raised them. You love your child. We want to come in as a partner to you and make sure we're doing all the right things to, impact them positively. So we start from there, from a position of service and learning and building a relationship with the parents. And then we really try to make sure there's a lot of touch points. We have uh, coffee with the principal monthly. We have a school site council, and we explain what our expectations are with all of the families. If there are extenuating needs that go into our Harmony Center, when we have our intake meetings, we go through the protocols. What would be something that would be classified as a Harmony protocol? What would be a behavior protocol? What are we doing to help kids calm down? What are we doing to help kids reset? We have one of our electives is yoga. Like, how are we instilling restorative practices that the kids can take with them when they're not at school? Breathing techniques. All of these things we're sharing with the parents. We also ask a lot of questions. We try to learn as much as we can about the students so that we can do the best job possible with delivering a well-rounded approach to discipline and behavior and being on the same page. One thing I also shared, which I don't always recommend because, maybe it's a little too much access, but every parent has my phone number. Every parent has my email, and I'm available. They over the years, it's been really nice that that access has not been abused. But if parents really do need to speak with me, to get a hold of me, big or small, just strategizing around ways to support their kid, I'm available, or someone from our staff will be available.
Beautiful. And for some context, Crete Academy, and this is a conversation I had with Aaron, looking at some of the data, not a lot of suspensions, if any at all. And so where do you see the parent involvement come into play when you're not having to have that conversation around suspensions, but there are still issues? Kids are coming in with a lot of challenges, a lot of trauma, families, the community, teachers aren't always equipped and ready to meet the students in the middle where they need to be met. So where do you often find yourself having that conversation or bringing parents into the fold in terms of how do we overcome this together with our teachers, with our adults, with our young people?
So early on, we figured out, because when we first opened our first year, we did have a lot of suspensions. We actually received a warning from LAUSD about our suspension level. And for a lot of the, first year teachers and administrators, that was just a traditional way of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And we started to realize that, the kids were not coming back more disciplined from suspension. A lot of times they had just lost learning time. And whatever the issue was, we weren't able to actively address it and kind of frame it in the restorative way that we wanted to. So a couple years in, we decided as a school we're not going to suspend students. I mean, unless it's something that strongly violates the but for the
Safety. Yeah.
right, but for the things, having disagreements, not behaving properly, and like things that we could really address, we weren't going to suspend students, and it worked wonders. And so the families, they're very thankful that we take that extra step. We do sometimes have in-school suspensions, but those are also based on restorative practices. We make sure, like, if there was a disagreement with another student, they go through a restorative exercise. They write letters to each other about how they're going to handle it differently the next time. They then may do a service project that day. cleaning up the garden together or helping with another classroom. And so the time at school, and also with learning being involved, so they'll be able to still get a lot of their work done. We found that to be much more productive than sending them home without a lot of structure or restoration. And now, that can be um, challenging to some schools, just depending on how your staff is set up. But we just made the commitment and put it really on our administrators that this is what we're going to do. And on the other side, it really holds the administrators accountable to make sure they're on top of student culture, that they know what's going on. They're, taking a lot of preventative measures so that, they don't have to have like kids on an in-school day or, having all of these students doing that work. So the parents really appreciate it. It gives us an opportunity, as I said at the beginning, it's all about relationships. So it really gives us an opportunity to build a relationship with those students, that extra time, that one-on-one time that we usually wouldn't get with them, by not suspending them and, turning it into an on-campus, harmony, on-campus administration issue. We've been able to really develop relationships and turn around the behavior to the point where we had no suspensions for 2 years. And I think the last year we had one or two, but it's very, very rare that we will suspend a student.
Yep, and I think what you just brought up, well, first of all, I appreciate the transparency and the vulnerability. Like we're all in this learning process and where Crete was to where Crete is today. It provides a connection to this next question. So in your first year, you talked about suspend. It was very much a systemic, just like how all systems do historically in this country with using suspension. And there were a lot of suspensions happening. And then you went drastically to, hey, we're not doing that anymore. So one of the questions that was posed is how are you building buy-in from staff and other education partners in the school building to adopt this shifting of a mindset of we're no longer doing this thing where you're the person of power, adult. You can, if you don't want the kid there, you can get him out of here. That's not the way anymore. How have you been able to kind of bring teachers and other educators along in that journey?
So one, I think our model really supported that action to the point where all staff, especially the teachers, began to see through our Harmony Center, having additional support staff, having MSWs, MFTs, having a level of support that wasn't there before or isn't really at, in a traditional school setting. We start with HALT, angry, lonely, tired. So teachers are trained on that, support staff. And so we really try to, prevent as many issues as possible and address all issues with students from a restorative measure. I think also as a school leader, putting the accountability on the administration to not suspend students and to spend that extra time working out the situations, resolving issues, critical thinking, having tough conversations with other students to make sure things got resolved. I think that really went a long way, where the teachers saw the buy-in of the administration, and that, that leading the way led them to understand, okay, if they're going to that level to make sure that our kids are really getting what they need, I could get on board. I could try to do a little more in my classroom to make sure my management is higher, my restorative practices, my lens for noticing what's going on with the kids can be a little clearer. And so, I always say, whatever it is, good or bad, it's going to float to the top pretty quick. It's the responsibility of leadership. And so, I think the admin leading that out, building trust with the teachers, and then having the teachers and did a lot for that decision.
Yep. Thank you for that. And then another question that came up related to a lot of this, and I think it was particularly interesting for Crete Academy's situation with no suspensions, being a part of the Reach network, was that there were still issues. Kids still were coming to school and not getting the equity, the positive, the amazing educational experience that every kid should be receiving. So for schools that are working towards that. They don't see the suspension data right away change. And so they're having to figure out other ways of like, how do we know we're making progress to ensuring our kids are receiving an equitable experience, a positive experience, a safe experience. So for Crete, what are some ways that y'all are thinking about your efforts, your initiatives, your Harmony Center? How are you measuring the progress? Because suspension data is like a non-factor almost, because to your point, it doesn't happen very much, if at all, at Crete Academy. But we do know there's still ways that you all are really working to create a better experience for young people. So what are some ways that y'all are either formally or maybe informally measuring the success of your initiatives and your work?
So definitely there's two ways, like you said, informal and formal. So formally, it would be, like you said, the hard data and our surveys. So we survey the teachers, we survey the students, and we survey the support staff. And so, and we're very transparent, very direct with that questioning. Are you satisfied with the disciplinary measures? Are you what are things we could do better? Things like that. So we really are very intentional about getting the feedback that would be necessary to help us do a better job. And I would also say once kids have moved on from the school, that's a more of an informal measure, but a lot of the relationships with those families, seeing the students progress and overcome a lot of the challenges that they started with at our school, the success stories, like that would be the informal measure, like, oh, this is really working. I more of an anecdotal story, but I think very fair to share. We had a student that was a runner, and I was chasing after this student most of the day. And I consulted with the leadership team. This is right before we went into the no suspension policy, and I was advocating for a suspension. I was advocating, the student shouldn't be here. And the founder, Mrs. Mitchell, said, have you really done everything you can to reach that student? Do you know what's going on at the core of the behavior, not the byproduct, not do you know what's going on at the root, not just the leaves falling out? Why is he running? Why can't he stay in one place? I said, I haven't dug that deep. And she said, take him to lunch. Go to lunch with him right now. Talk to him and see what's going on. And so I took that student to lunch. We started building a relationship. This is 5 years ago. And I took this, we still see each other monthly. I still check in on him in after school, but he didn't have a father figure. He didn't have some basic things that we take for granted. And we built a relationship and worked out things to where the behavior kind of adjusted on its own after the relationship built, and there was a respect and a trust there. But all that to say, really going the extra step and making sure we're reaching the kids and building those relationships, that's when we see the biggest change. The hard data is great to have and really helps us with how we're spending money and allocating resources and the staff. But just seeing the change in time from what we're doing really made a difference, because everything I was doing before that wasn't productive. And so building the relationships, really getting close to the kids and the families.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you for that. And this may be the last question, but I'll try and squeeze in two more that we have here. So, and again, this is just such a great example for folks to be listening to, because you all went literally from a normal, I think a standard baseline status quo operation of suspensions, punitive measures, suspensions, to it's not essentially not, we're not doing that anymore. So just like a drastic binary, we're doing it, not doing it year to year. So
and Mike, before you ask that last question, I do want to add, as I said, that was anecdotal, but most of the students we do have a formal process where we're engaging the parents, we're engaging the students, and we're able to monitor what our practices are doing. So we have an SSPT where we meet with the parent, the teacher, the admin, and if there's a counselor involved, the counselor, and we
Hmm.
go over strategies, we go over things that are in place or things that we're going to do. We create a plan for student success. It's a student success student support and progress team, and we monitor that bi-weekly. And so that's also very helpful in measuring what's working and what's not working. If the student is seeing a counselor in the Harmony Center, and we're noticing, oh, instead of, you know, 3 incident reports last month, the student has no incident reports for the last 2 months, is noticeably happier. Things we take a look at the notes from the Harmony
Hmm.
visits, it's working. So we're able to also, formally track the progress that way also.
Yep. Yep. That was definitely some Aaron. And for folks on the webinar, Aaron's another member of the Crete Academy team that has been working as with the Reach Network. But that's kind of quantify a lot of those services and access y'all are giving the students. How has your team and your leadership addressed resistance and skepticism from staff or parents that maybe just again, I think this is not something that our previous generations are used to hearing. Like when suspensions is a very last resort, if at all. So how have you, especially with staff, and especially with more tenured staff that have been in the game for a little bit, how are you all working through that resistance to shift their mindset to this more restorative, relationship focused approach?
Yeah, so I do want to just say it's not easy. It's not something
Hmm.
that, you roll out and everybody's cheering
Yep.
and
Oh, I know it.
right
That's why
on
I wanted to
board.
hear what you had to say. Yep.
It's a process, but I again, I think the best way to do it is to lead by example. So when we rolled it out, putting the onus on the school leaders and the admin and showing the teachers what our buy-in level is, and also, and again, our Harmony Center has a big part in it. And, when there's additional support at the school, where there's counselors, where there's an area where kids could go to reset, and everybody's on the same page, that does help a lot. For folks that may not have that setup, the way that we're able to do it, we get MSWs that are from local colleges, UCLA, USC, Pepperdine. They come in, they need to do hours. They're in their master's program, they have a lot of knowledge already. And then we contract with an LCSW, someone licensed to manage them. And then we're able to get a lot of our kids to have those services right on board. Now, you also have to have a little space on campus, but having that support goes a long way with the teachers, knowing that there's an additional level of support. Also, with the admin leading the charge, I can't say that enough. Just going by example, not telling the teachers not to suspend, and we're not going to do anything different. We jumped out there first and said, we're going to step in, we're going to provide additional support. And if things do get to a level that are beyond what a normal classroom management would entail, we're going to step in and make sure we spend the time with the student and try to do our best to restore, instead of punish. And so I think the best thing to do is lead by example, and then the results and the progress will show, and that's when you really get everybody on board. But leading by example, I think, was the best way for us to do it, where we saw and we heard back, from the teachers that they really appreciated that. They felt supported. They felt, like it was a team effort. It wasn't just a directive given to the teachers to work on. Like we were all working on it together. Again, I want to emphasize it's a process. Um, that year was, a lot of change isn't always comfortable. Change isn't always, doesn't always feel warm and fuzzy, but it was very effective. And by the next year, starting the year out, everybody was on the same page, and it was, 10 times easier to get the work done.
Yep. Yep. Well, I have 2 minutes left with you, Brett, and I'm going to take it because I just love hearing you tell about Crete Academy. So, but the table's yours. Really, I'll frame it with what are the biggest lessons you've learned in transitioning to the model and the place that Crete is at and the standards that you're holding the adults there. But really, just say what's on your heart, and we'll close out with that.
No, absolutely. I think one of the metric that isn't talked about enough in education that is well at play at our school is just love. A lot of the kids are missing out on that piece. And when you can be very intentional and operate from a place of love with these kids, you could get so much further. And as we all know, love is a very powerful and heavy word. But if you're doing everything you can and you're really pushing yourself, from a place of love to figure out what would help, what could be a difference maker. Have I done everything I could do? Have I talked to the parents? Have I tried all the strategies? Have I read on new strategies? Have I talked to a mentor? It's really the growth mindset and pushing yourself to find out what is possible, because all these kids, you know, they're designed the same way. They want to do well, they want to be successful. Kids don't show up to school wanting to misbehave and have trouble. It's finding a way to reach them. And a lot of the times the difference is what you're willing to do. Everybody wants students that behave and learn and are easy to work with, but everybody's not willing to push themselves to see what else I can do to really reach this student. So I would say, operating from a place of love, from a place of patience, really asking yourself, what can you do to reach this student? Because a lot of the students are difficult to reach, or, you may not even think you're ever going to reach them until you really tap into that source. So that's really been a game changer for us. As I said, for me, when I first got there, I was suspending. I had a low tolerance for a lot of the behaviors, and really being able to look at the kids from a different lens was a game changer for me. And I would encourage everyone else to do the same. It really worked wonders.
Well, if that ain't a mic drop moment, I don't know what is. All right, Brett. Well, I appreciate you.